Benjamin Netanyahu is suspected of having the desire to continue the war for as long as possible, because during wartime, obviously, the nation is, to all intents and purposes, united around the war effort. And therefore, it's considered inappropriate to talk politics.
Now, 4 months into the Israel-Gaza conflict, Benjamin Netanyahu faces a war on the home front too, amid mounting political pressures. The Israeli Prime Minister has been accused of failing to foresee the Hamas attacks. Polls show he would lose an election. He could even face jail. Matthew Campbell, foreign features editor for The Times and Sunday Times, has been writing about this. He's with us now. Morning.
Morning, Chloe.
So how much pressure, real pressure, is Benjamin Netanyahu under at home?
Well, he is under enormous pressure from conflicting sides. On the one hand, you've got his right wing, which is worried that he's not actually going in hard enough in Gaza and that he should be doing more. While Netanyahu is under attack in Europe and in America for inflicting devastation and enormous suffering on Gaza, with the deaths of 25,000 Palestinians, 3/4 of them women and children, we are told. On the right wing, it's considered that he's not basically pursuing the war with enough vigor, and that, they shouldn't be letting in humanitarian aid, and that they should be basically moving the population of Khan Yunis. That's this town in the south of Gaza, home to about 200,000 people, and the latest focus of intense fighting, that they should be relocated somewhere. So there's that on the one hand. And then on the other hand, you've got the families of the hostages that are still being held in these appalling conditions in tunnels in Gaza. 100 have been released in December. There are still 137 or so, I'm told. Some of them may not be alive, but there's a session of talks going on in Paris today, actually, on this question to negotiate a ceasefire. And it's hoped that this might result in a month's ceasefire, allowing another wave of hostages to be released. First of all, women and children, the injured, and then perhaps another month's cessation of hostilities for the remainder of hostages to be released, men and soldiers who've been captured in the fighting.
From a political, I was just going to say, from a political perspective, does it benefit Benjamin Netanyahu to keep the war going? Because presumably no nation wants to get rid of their leader during wartime. But if there was to be an end to the war, or even a lengthy ceasefire, could that give critics time to oust him?
Well, you put your finger on this very interesting paradox, in a sense, that Benjamin Netanyahu is suspected of having the desire to continue the war for as long as possible, because during wartime, obviously, the nation is, to all intents and purposes, united around the war effort. And therefore, it's considered inappropriate to talk politics. Of course, politics is being talked all the time. I've spent a few days here chatting to politicians and military experts and analysts, and everybody is talking about the possible scenarios. Netanyahu said on television here last night, I'm in Tel Aviv, by the way, that's where he is based, where he holds meetings of his war cabinet in this defense ministry complex down the road. He said that the war would go on for months, possibly. That's his, he said that before. Months might be too long for much of the Israeli population that would like to see a change of government.
And we mentioned in the queue he might even face jail. Just explain that.
Well, yes, there are these criminal cases against him, largely involving corruption, that have been going on for a while now. While he's in office, it's much harder to prosecute him. He has various privileges. Before October the 7th, when this appalling tragedy took place, when Hamas assaulted Israel and slaughtered 1,200 people, he was already under enormous pressure then. There were these vast protests sweeping the land all over this judicial reform that was being plotted and that had been promoted by these extremists who are in his coalition. The idea was to basically strip the Supreme Court of most of its powers, and it was suspected by some that this was a gambit by Netanyahu to prevent further criminal allegations against him.
And of course, politically, he's in a very precarious situation anyway, because of the nature, well, partly nature of the Israeli parliamentary system, but the coalition that he's built.
Yes, that's right. He has quite a slim majority, 120 members of the Knesset. He has 64 seats, thanks to this alliance with rightist religious parties. It's considered potentially fragile.